First and foremost, I want the American people to know that our experts here at the CDC and across our government agree that the chances of an Ebola outbreak here in the United States are extremely low.
You guys concerned about Ebola?
No, not really.
Right, so Ebola is not as contagious. It's a very infectious virus, but it's not as contagious. You can't catch Ebola from food, from talking to someone, from coughing. You really have to have contact with bodily fluids.
Let's go back and look at the plain truth of how Ebola spreads. It only spreads from someone who's sick and only spreads from direct contact.
Do you trust what the government tells you about Ebola?
Oh, no.
Here's what we know about Ebola.
I'm not even familiar with it.
The Ebola virus, the outbreak of Ebola?
In Africa? I know.
You haven't heard anything about it?
No.
Ebola. The word itself invokes fear. Unless you've been living under a rock, you cannot avoid hearing about it. But what is it? The media tells us that it's a virus from the jungles of Africa that has jumped from monkeys and bats into the lives of man. And isn't this the same story they told us about the origins of the AIDS virus? That as man encroaches upon more jungle habitats, hidden killers lurk in the deep, ready to wipe out humanity. But is this myth really true? When you listen to the mainstream media reports regarding Ebola transmission, you are bombarded with the same line that the virus is only spread through direct contact or direct contact with body fluids.
That it is not like the flu. It is not airborne. The only way that a person can contract Ebola is by coming into direct contact with the bodily fluids of somebody who is showing symptoms.
As you've been hearing from us, Ebola is a serious disease. It's only spread by direct contact with someone who's sick with the virus.
Ebola is actually not that easily transmissible. Don't forget, you can't really sneeze or breathe, and somebody will catch it in the way you could the common cold or a flu virus. You have to come in contact with a lot of saliva or mucus, diarrhea, vomiting, blood, things like that.
I took to the local university campus to talk with some students about Ebola and what they thought. I was surprised seeing these young minds regurgitating media propaganda nearly word for word.
I've read studies about that, and I read that it would be close to impossible for a type of virus like that. I mean, it is very close to the AIDS virus in the way that it can mutate in that way, but it's pretty impossible for something that goes through the body by touch and transmit in that type of way would start to mutate in a form that it could transmit through air. That's a way different story, and it could happen.
But why is that? I mean, they keep telling us,
I'm not a
Obama,
biologist,
the CDC keeps telling us that it's not airborne.
Mm-hmm.
But it is in body fluids, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's
so
in
if
the saliva, it's in the blood,
in
right?
the air, then maybe.
It's in the saliva, it's in the blood, right?
in the air, then maybe.
Okay,
but it's a different
what
biology.
happens when you sneeze?
Then it's particles in the air that are being transmitted,
right.
Not so much.
But isn't that airborne?
No.
Well, Obama would be proud of his efforts to snow job the public regarding Ebola. As you could see in this interview, this young student completely bent reality in order to conform what she had been told by her dear leader. Obama, his administration, and the CDC heads have been tirelessly singing the same tune, that Ebola is not airborne, that Ebola is not like the flu, that Ebola is not spread through coughing or sneezing, that the virus is only spread through direct contact, or direct contact with body fluids. And these efforts were apparently bearing fruit. Could it be that the administration is downplaying the threat of Ebola and downright lying to us about it because we are so close to the November elections? Well, yes it is, but it also goes much deeper than that.
I think from the very beginning they haven't been completely forthright with us. They've so wanted to downplay this that they really, I don't think, have been very accurate in their description of the disease. For example, they say, don't worry, it's only mixture of bodily fluids through direct contact. So what are you thinking? I'm thinking like AIDS. You don't get AIDS at a cocktail party, so my level of alarm goes down, and if I'm treating somebody or looking at them around them, I'm thinking, oh no, it's like AIDS, I'm not going to get it. But it really isn't like AIDS. And then they'll say in a little lower voice, oh, but direct contact can be 3 feet from somebody.
In fact, it does not take a great deal of medical expertise or research savvy to determine that the Ebola virus is readily transmitted through the air. In fact, the Ebola virus is not only heavily present in the aerosols emitted during sneezing of an infected person, but the very cells that the virus binds to, the landing site for infection, are in the sinuses, eyes, lungs, esophagus, and anywhere else capillary networks are close to the surface. Researchers from the University of Iowa Healthcare and Carver Medical School identified the protein called TIM1 as the main receptor for Ebola and the Marburg virus binding during transmission. Subsequent experiments proved that both Ebola and Marburg viruses use TIM1 as a receptor for infecting cells. And the TIM1 protein is widely expressed on epithelial cells, which are the cells that line mucosal surfaces of the airways and the eyes. The researchers went on to note that these locations are consistent with known ways the Ebola virus is thought to be transmitted, including the inhalation of aerosolized droplets from infected individuals. Do you believe what they say about the transmissibility of Ebola?
As in, you have to touch someone?
Right.
No.
Nah, probably
no.
not.
That's too convenient.
Like yeah,
too convenient?
Too convenient.
Why do you think they would lie about that?
To keep us
happy,
calm, keep us calm,
and keep us from freaking out and losing our crap.
But why do they want to keep us calm?
Because they're already in trouble.
Riot?
Yeah. I mean.
Well, so who would we hold responsible?
At first the CDC, but then of course we'd go to their so-called handlers, as in those higher up the chain in the government.
I don't think you can hold anybody responsible for a disease that just happens.
Well, you could if they didn't tell us the truth and it spread because we were fed misinformation,
Lies.
right?
Yeah, no, that's true. Well, if they're lying to us, then they're obviously at fault.
So what does this all mean? It means that Ebola is readily transmitted through the air. It means that Ebola is airborne. It means that Ebola is spread just like the flu. It means that the Obama administration and the CDC have been lying to us about this disease, and they are lying about the most important and primary information regarding this virus. They are lying about how it is spread. They are lying about the very information that is most important to the public. When one now watches the CDC and Obama speak of the transmissibility of the disease, you see the vagaries of lawyer speak at work. In what Rand Paul referred to as the littler voice, they say direct contact or direct contact with body fluids. But the difference between having direct contact with someone and direct contact with their body fluids is night and day. In fact, government-funded research at MIT showed that direct contact with body fluids of an infected individual can take place through ventilation systems. That infected aerosols can travel up to 200 times further than face-to-face contact. It only takes one virus to bind to an epithelial cell in the mouth, lungs, esophagus, sinuses to cause infection. And a single aerosolized droplet, the size of a speck of dust from a sneeze or cough of an Ebola victim, contains millions upon millions of virus particles.
Let's go back and look at the plain truth of how Ebola spreads. It only spreads from someone who's sick and only spreads from direct contact with the person or their body fluids.
With the help of an MIT colleague, Dr. John Bush, Dr. Bariba set about quantifying the physics of sneezes and coughs.
If you saw someone sneeze with the naked eye, you would see drops flying out, and they go at whatever their initial speed is, and that determines their range. So in particular, that large drops go farther than small drops. Basically, there was no consideration whatsoever of the gas phase.
They call this the multi-phased cloud.
It's really to try to highlight the fact that it's not just droplets being emitted, but there are really this background turbulent, hot and moist air that is swirling around, advecting these droplets further away.
And to find out how important this cloud is to the spread of diseases, Dr. Bariba needed to visualize sneezes and coughs in their finest detail. Sneeze after sneeze, Dr. Bariba collected data which she could then use to model the act.
So the analysis relies on image processing techniques and algorithms that have to be developed to really track both the cloud and the droplet trajectories.
Turns out we grossly underestimated the effect of the multi-phased cloud.
You think of the cloud as being turbulent, that is to say very disordered, vigorous motion. If characteristic speed in that cloud is larger than its settling speed, then it will be dominated more by that internal cloud motion than by its settling speed.
Translation?
The smaller drops go much further than the large drops.
Because the cloud keeps them afloat.
And right now, the finding shows that these clouds, particularly under usual conditions of temperature and buoyancy, has a tendency to go higher in the room and get sucked into the ventilation system. I could be in this end of the building and somebody could be in contact with my pathogens through infiltration in the ventilation system without me actually meeting that person.
It's a little disturbing, no?
I am definitely more aware of sneezers and coughers all around.
But it does definitely impact the sort of design of places where pathogen transport is critical, particularly, again, hospitals, classrooms, and airplanes.
And airborne Ebola is not a new revelation. The CDC has been aware of the airborne nature of Ebola for decades. Ebola is readily transmitted not just through the air, but through ventilation systems.
In 1989, Ebola made its way to the U.S. Residents of this Washington, D.C. suburb had no idea that one of the world's deadliest viruses had emerged in their midst. In a primate quarantine unit in Reston, Virginia, monkeys in one of the holding rooms suddenly began to die. Secretly, a military team entered the quarantine unit and killed all 60 monkeys in the infected room. The crisis heightened as monkeys began to die in a different room. It appeared that the virus was moving through the ventilating system. In response, the military killed all 400 monkeys, ending the outbreak. This new strain of Ebola had shown the potential to spread through the air. Had it been lethal in humans, it could have been catastrophic.
Hey, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Are you concerned about Ebola?
Yeah, at some level.
Do you think the government's telling us the truth on its transmission? Do you think the government would give us the truth?
Yeah, pretty much.
You think the government's telling us the truth on Ebola?
Probably. I don't see any reason for them to lie about a disease outbreak.
Well, our approach at CDC is always to tell people more rather than less. We're going to tell you what happens, when it happens. When we don't know something, we'll tell you that as well.
Be happy. Something down the news. I said something.
The African.
No eating something. Don't touch your friend. Eating something dangerous. Money, I started yelling. Now what you I said what you